To close out our event today, we have Mr. Ethan Dunham. Ethan is a co-owner and CEO of the Oregon company Upward Technology. He and his company work to implement IT solutions for several organizations, both large and small. For over 30 years, he has worked with companies like Nike, Pacificorp, Omega Metal, the Children's Cancer Association, and much more. Ethan also has been a longtime participant in Cycle Oregon, serves on several nonprofit boards, and sings in his church choir. So without further ado, please welcome to the stage our final speaker with his talk, Technology in Your Future, Mr. Ethan Dunham.
I'd forgotten about that. I wrote that about myself, so. Thank you for having me here today, Trish. This is a terrific audience. I have to say two things I was mentioning to my person I was sitting by. The thing that is most exciting about this audience is the number of women here. Yay! And the other one is, I don't see you guys looking at your smartphones, which is amazing. So you're all disciplined. I appreciate that. So the team asked me to talk about how youth of today can participate in technology of the future. And I felt like, you know, that's sort of a rhetorical question because you guys are the future. Technology's all going to come from you. So what I thought was maybe I could share a little bit about some of the things that I've learned that would help you in your careers. So that's what I'm going to talk about. It's technology in school, some things that, how you could use technology to make school less boring. Technology and your friends, how you might be able to use it to make and be a better friend. And then what we all need to do is how we're going to use it to make the world a better place, how we're going to cure cancer with it, how we're going to learn to run faster. So I think it's important, before I got here I figured, you know, it's a Saturday afternoon, these are students, chances are they're here, they're not at the mall hanging out with their friends, they're not home playing video games, just because they're already pretty smart. All of you, I think, probably do well in school. So if there's one thing I've noticed about folks that come to work for me or with my own children who did really well in school, there's a lot of things in school that are boring. Now, I'm not going to give you scientific research on this. I've done a lot of study on it, but so what I'm telling you hopefully will make sense. I think there's two reasons things are boring. One is because they are boring. You know, there are some things that you just got to get through. Health, for example. You know, those sorts of things are just boring. The other thing is that your minds work really fast. You guys are thinking really quickly. You're solving problems. And how many of you don't have to raise your hand if you want to, you're sitting in class and you're trying to solve an equation or a problem that came up last night while you were with your friends, while your poor teacher's droning on about, you know, the economic development of Ecuador, your head just gets lost. So what I would say is two things. Is understand that about yourself, and it's okay. It's okay that you know that some things are boring, but don't let it impact. Understand that, and then when you have a chance, do the boring stuff early. You go home at night, you've got homework to do. The stuff that you don't like, do it first. Don't do like I did or a lot of other kids I know do. You put it off till the very end. Even after you're tired, you've goofed off, and now you don't give it your best time, your best effort, so you do lousy at it. The other thing is if you do it first and get it out of the way, then you can reward yourself and get on to the fun stuff. The other thing is it's really important when you're in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, ace that stuff. Do really well in those classes that you may not be interested in. Because, as the adults in the room will tell you, as you go along and you develop a reputation of being a really good student, guess what starts happening in your sophomore, your junior year? You might be in that boring class on Ecuadorian economic development, and the teacher says, hey, Ethan, I noticed, you've been getting A's all along. I'm going to let you and your buddies take this semester and go do a special project. You don't have to come to class. That sort of thing starts happening, so school gets a lot more fun. But it won't happen if you goof off and let the boring stuff drag you down. Another thing, and this I've noticed, I've seen with my own boys, and you maybe have already done this, but if you use the creativity to do really cool stuff, so if the teacher says, hey, you got to do a term paper, you build a website. Or they say we want you to do some research on Ecuadorian economic development, you run an app. That lets you use your creativity and your experience and do something other than typing on a term paper. So this is an important thing for us geeks, is making friends. What's been talked about here a lot, and you're recognizing it, is just how important new stuff happens. It's extraordinarily rare for anything of any consequence to happen by just one individual. So working in a team means you need to learn that you have to be able to get along with other people. And most of the time you're going to learn those skills right now in figuring out how to be a good friend. So what do all your parents tell you about how to make and be a friend? What do they say? What's the most important thing about making friends? Be a good friend, right? If you're going to be friendly. So what is the ways that I notice that you can use technology? And I notice this in the young people that I hire. Oftentimes, they don't listen all that well. They're all self-absorbed in their own stuff. And when I talk to them about personal things, they oftentimes forget. Well, what's one of the things that your smartphones and your technology doesn't do is it never forgets anything. So a tactic I've used is when I talk to people, I write things down. I write down their birthday. I use a program called OneNote. I don't know if you've heard that. It's a Microsoft product. It's really great. I can put pictures in there. I can create a page for them. I put in their who their favorite music is, all the things about them, and then oftentimes before I go hang out with them, I'll look at that and I'll remember, what's this, and it helps me use technology to be a much better friend because, as you know, I have one friend who's brilliant. He has 2 PhDs and a law degree, but he's really not had a very good life. And one of the reasons is when you sit with him, he just talks all about himself, constantly. So he exhausts you. I don't know if you have friends like that, but you don't want to be that guy. So if you sit down and it doesn't make sense to you, and some of you in this room, this is hard. This is really hard. If you've written a few things down, like the name of their dog, when their birthday is, you can sit down and you can say, hey, Mary, how's your mom doing? I wrote down here that she went to the hospital. Or I noticed, I'm going to really carbon date myself here. Your favorite band is The Clash. Have you been following their new album? Just a quick couple of conversations like that, and it makes you become a much better friend. The other thing, and I think especially do this as you get into, many of you are probably already running into this, but the idea of listening and respect, is something you don't see on the television right now in the political campaigns. There isn't a lot of that going on. But I think it's important, if you use your technology to learn about what other people think and feel, I find it extraordinarily useful. So use your technology to do that. Again, write it down. The other thing I'll mention is my friend that I talked about who doesn't listen. If you have trouble listening, test yourself out. Do a scientific experiment. When you sit and talk with your friends, how much of the time do you spend talking versus what they're spending talking? Because when you're talking, you're not listening. And how many of you get angry when you talk to your friends? You disagree with them. And why do you disagree with them? Maybe you don't respect them. Maybe you think their opinions are garbage, but maybe they think the same thing about you. So those are two signals that you want to use, is listen to how much, or think about how much time you're talking versus your friends, and then are you getting angry with their opinions just because you disagree with them? That means you don't respect them. A couple other things I'll talk about with more on making friends. This is something that my generation has really struggled with, as we have tended to use written communication when we really shouldn't, because it's been easy. What I mean is that let's take a sentence. Hey, did you see Fred's new website? Simple sentence. You could text it out, send it to your friend. Hey, did you see Fred's new website? The communication has 3 dimensions to it. I'm here talking, you can see me, you can see my facial expressions, you can kind of get a lot of cues. In fact, to digress for a second, is anybody in the room like AI? Big AI? This is something that they just have a terrible time trying to figure out, is the human interaction. All the stuff that goes on, all the they call them micro expressions, all this stuff is incredibly powerful, all the things that we do when we talk to each other. Well, when you're face to face, you can communicate all those things together. If you're on the phone, it's only 2 dimensions. You get their voice inflection and you can hear their words. When you're typing or texting, it's 1 dimension. So you can say something in a text or an email or a Facebook post, and you may not mean it to be upsetting or mean or anything, but it can be taken really badly. Like that sentence, have you seen Fred's new website? I could say, have you seen Fred's new website? Have you seen Fred's new website? Have you seen Fred's new website? All of those say different things, don't they? So it's important to understand that when you use technology, be careful how you communicate with it. Skype and FaceTime are something that we've found works much better if you can't get together with somebody and you have to talk about something important. At least get on Skype. Don't text them, especially if you're upset or you think something's wrong. Absolutely don't use text to do that. Talk to your parents too about people who've cratered their careers by sending out an email that they thought was supposed to be professional or whatever, and ended up blowing up. So the last thing I'll talk about today is using technology to help make the world a better place. Something that we've all been talking to you about here, all the speakers, is this concept of leadership. What we're hoping is that you will take on whatever you decide to do and be a leader. And I think what I mean by a leader, leaders tend to think differently. I grew up, in fact, I'm the same age as Bill Gates, so that carbon dates me, and Steve Jobs from Apple. And one of the famous things that Steve Jobs would say, may he rest in peace, was people asked him, hey, so when you built the Mac, what kind of market research did you do? Did you hire firms, go out and study? He said, no. They said, well, how did you know it would work? He said, because I knew. I'm thinking differently. You can't do market, in fact, his actual quote was, you can't do market research on something that doesn't exist, or you have to show it to people before. People will have to wait and see it before they know they'll like it. So some of you have got ideas right now, which you talk to your friends or your mom or your uncle, and they'll say, that's a crazy idea. That's great. That's great feedback when they say it's a crazy idea. That means you're thinking differently. Well, what's the other ingredient you want with that is think fast and fail fast. Because how many of you have heard of the Lisa computer? Anybody here? All the old people in the room. So the Mac, we all know, is incredibly successful. One of the most, in fact, I think to this day, that if you just took the Apple Mac, it sold more computers than any other. It doesn't, the individual computer, other Apple applications or other companies like Hewlett-Packard and Lenovo, they've sold many more computers, but they're spread across several different devices or models. But the Mac has done extraordinarily well. But the Lisa was the predecessor to the Mac. In some ways, it had terrific technology. It had a mouse, it had a graphical user interface, and it bombed. I mean, it did terribly. But unlike some of his competitors, Steve said, okay, I'm done. I failed fast. They threw it aside and then created the new team, starting to develop the Mac. So that's the other thing you're learning, which hopefully you'll learn this in your robotics. You try an idea, it doesn't work, move on. But the important thing is don't stop thinking and coming up with good ideas. So that's all I have for today. I hope that you're enjoyed the day. It's been fantastic. But if you have any questions, I'm done.